I suppose thank you again for
Not at all. Pleasure.
for setting it up. And like we were saying, I suppose the main thing is it's really about the leadership qualities, or kind of what you see a leader as being, or what qualities you see in yourself. I suppose one of the first questions that we would have is, what would you see as your core values as a person, as a leader? What your core values and your beliefs are?
Well, I suppose my core value is the dignity of every single human being. From a religious point of view, I would say, every human being is a child of God and has the dignity of being a child of God, and nobody and nothing can take that away from them. So the dignity of every human being for me is the primary core value. And for a society, we have to affirm that dignity. So that's how I got involved in homelessness. For people to be on the street is a huge denial of their dignity. It's hugely offensive to their dignity, and therefore, I suppose I have been. That would drive me to commit myself to working with homeless people. That's my contribution to trying to build a society that affirms that dignity in practice as well as in words.
Yes, okay, very good.
I was just thinking, in terms of the Ireland of today, are there any leaders out there that you would sort of admire? Anybody that you would think, well, they're doing a good job in terms of leading people or putting people on the right path?
The people I would admire would be in the voluntary sector, primarily the community and voluntary sector, people who have been working tirelessly for their communities. I mean, a man I greatly admired was Tony Gregory, and I knew Tony Gregory before he ever became a TD. And Tony was absolutely and totally committed to the inner city community. And even after he became a TD, that commitment remained. He wasn't in politics for himself. It wasn't for his own self-advancement. He remained totally and absolutely committed to the people. And that's very rare, and it's very rare in politicians. And I think the other aspect of that is that in the global economy that we are inserted in, it's very difficult, almost impossible for any political leader to espouse what we might call a left-wing agenda, because if they came into power with a left-wing agenda, then a commitment to promoting the good of the poor and promoting the participation of everybody in society, then investment would see this country as somewhere that's not kind to business, because it's not promoting policies that are good for business, and investment would be frightened off. So I think within that global economy, it is very difficult to have political policies that are seriously promoting the good of those who are poor. Yes, people will throw money at it, a little bit of money at it, and people will ensure that the problem doesn't get out of control, but a commitment to those on the margins is very, very difficult for any politician to promote.
It's interesting, actually, commitment. I've never heard that used in that sense.
Well, for me, that's what leadership is about.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's about commitment.
When you mentioned Tony Gregory there, and you say commitment was one of his characteristics, and that one of the things that you really admired in him. Is there anything else in terms of his character or characteristics that you feel he had as a good leader?
He knew how to surround himself with a very, very good team, and a team who shared the same values as he did. And I think that was key. Tony Gregory wasn't out there on his own. He had a very, very good team. Maureen O'Sullivan now, who's taken over, and others who made it happen for him. As a leader, it's very hard to do anything on your own. You need that team behind you, and you need a team behind you who share your vision, share your commitment above all, and who'll work with you.
Yeah. And when you say about your team, how do, I suppose, you try to inspire that team, or do you try to inspire, or do you take inspiration from them as well, or how does that say for when you were setting up your organisation originally?
No, I suppose I had a vision, and the vision was, right, we are going to work with homeless people.
Yeah.
The vision was that there were other groups working with homeless people as well.
Yeah.
I didn't just want to be another organisation working with homeless people, so part of our vision and part of our ethos now in the organisation is that we want to work with the most marginalised
Yes.
of homeless people. So we would never turn anybody away.
Yeah.
Unless we had no room, of course, then you don't have any choice.
Yeah.
But we would never say to somebody, no, your problems are too difficult for us to deal with. And we would never put anybody out. We never throw anybody out. We're lucky at the moment in that we have 12 hostels, so if there is a real difficulty between, say, two residents, or between you move them to another hostel rather than throwing them out. But that was part of our commitment, our ethos, that we wanted to work with the people maybe that other organisations were unhappy to work with. And so if people come into the organisation to work with that, they have to buy into that ethos.
And how do you try to do that? Do you have tactics around how you not tactics, I suppose? Do you have ways of doing that?
No. Well, initially, I mean, initially for many years, our organisation was me.
Yeah.
I was the person who made all the decisions.
Yeah.
And gradually we got staff. Initially, the only staff we had were on a community employment scheme.
Yes.
And some of those turned out to be very, very good. And when we got some money, they became full-time staff members. But they were really taking the lead from me,
Right.
and that commitment to working with the most vulnerable, most difficult, they absorbed it, as it were. And if they weren't comfortable with that, then they would leave.
And was that a challenge for you in some ways, as someone that was a leader of the organisation, on your own nearly, and running it yourself, and then when people started to come in and give other ideas, did that challenge you? Did they have different? Was there
No.
conflict within that sometimes?
No, that didn't challenge me. What did challenge me was I'm not. I have no expertise in management or anything like that. So managing people and managing staff and that, I was total amateur at that. And luckily the staff who came to us, who we employed, were very, very good by and large. And they accepted the limitations that I had in terms of managing them. But I mean, now I'm clear there are different management styles. My style was to say, look, there's the job, go and do it.
Yes.
You know, I'm not going to be breathing down your neck. I think I personally would prefer that management style to somebody who's really hands-on, directive, telling people what they should be doing. I think staff found it.
In terms of like leadership, like you say, your staff, they obviously view you and have viewed you in the past as a leader, but also in terms of the people that use your services. And do you think there's a difference there in terms of your responsibility as a leader, or does it require the same sort of skills and that?
I haven't a clue. I mean, see, I never saw myself as a leader. I still don't see myself as a leader. I just want to work with homeless people. And for a long time, I say I was the organisation. I was the managing director. I was the financial accountant. I was the electrician who fixed the light bulbs. I was just everything. And so I made all the decisions. And so the homeless people we worked with, knew that I was the one they had to keep happy,
Yeah.
as it were. So the whole thing revolved around me. I was at the centre, and the hub all revolved around me.
Which is a lot of responsibility.
Well, it is, and it has its advantages in that it was a very personable organisation, and homeless people, their primary relationship was to me, and secondarily then to the other staff. That created some tensions, all right, because they would often bypass the staff and come straight to me, so we had to sort that out. Then I realised a number of years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, this is unsustainable. And if anything happened to me, the whole thing would implode. So we began to make the organisation independent of me. And so we employed a CEO and an admin team. They look after all the administration now. They look after the running of the organisation. They look after the finances. And that frees me to do what I want to do, which is work face to face with homeless people. But also, I wasn't very good at that. I mean, I wasn't interested in developing strategic plans and policies and procedures, and that bores me to tears. Now, it's absolutely necessary to have it. Funders require it, for example.
Yeah.
So it was great that we part of the reasoning was we had to make this independent of me. In case anything happened to me, we want the organisation to be sustainable. But secondly, I was falling down on all those important administrative functions, and the whole thing would have it wouldn't have functioned very successfully if I hadn't delegated or passed over all those tasks to somebody else. So I think one of the things I have learned is that it's very important for somebody who sets up an organisation to be able to let go.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and
Good point.
I think a lot of organisations, the person who sets it up finds it very hard to let go. I didn't. I was delighted. Now I say, if there's a problem in one of the hostels at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's somebody else's phone goes, not mine. But I think that's very important, to know when to let go.
Yeah, yeah. And another question, I suppose, which is tricky, which is coming up now for lots of organisations, and I know maybe you're not part of that, in some ways you're freed up, like you're saying. But you know, the way, say for instance, you as a person and as an organisation would challenge the way, say, the homeless process and how it is all organised at the moment, or has been in the past, or is going to be in the future. Do you find that tricky to challenge that process, especially in relation to then funding? And
No.
You don't?
I have no problem. I mean, I'm angry. I get angry all the time.
Yeah.
The way homeless people are treated, the way the problem of homelessness is not being satisfactorily addressed just makes me angry, and I let that anger out through talking in the media, writing articles, and so forth. Do I find that it's much easier now that we have a CEO and an admin team, because when we're looking for funding or negotiating funding, I have nothing to do with it. They do it. So I can wear my other hat, which is working here in the Jesuit Centre for Faith and Justice, which is really a nominal job I have. I do help out a little bit, but when I'm writing letters to the paper, for example, and complaining about government policy, I use Jesuit Centre for Faith and Justice as my hat.
Right.
And so it allows me to criticise, and it allows our organisation to continue to get money.
Would you think other organisations, not only within the homeless sector, but within the not-for-profit sector, would you feel they're slow to, or?
I would. I think there is. When you receive government money, the threat of that money being reduced or withdrawn is always there if you rock the boat. I think that is quite explicit, actually, in terms of government policy.
Yeah.
So I think that is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Huge problem. And it's interesting, in the Charities Act, charities are defined as organisations that are non-political in any sense. So I think any organisation that starts criticising government policy could easily find themselves knocked off the charities register.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned there about Jesuits, and Jesuits as known as men for others, and in a way that sort of fits very well with servant leadership. But like, what does that mean to you, like men for others? I mean, you seem to be very much living it.
Men for others means other people become the centre of your life, not you, and that your life is lived for the benefit of others, and clearly for me, obviously, for the benefit of those who are on the margins of our society. So that's what it means to me.
Can I ask you a question? I suppose a number of our class, actually I'm just thinking of this now, a number of our class are, because we're mixed in with people doing it for very lay people as part of the church, etc. I'm just thinking, because I know you said, I was watching a documentary the other night about that you did with RT, and you were saying that if you were the Pope you wouldn't live in the Vatican. And what do you think of the new Pope? Just as a matter of interest.
Yeah, I think he's a wonderful inspiration.
Yeah.
I think he has been for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think he's returning us to the Gospels, because the Gospels were about Jesus reaching out to those on the margins, living with those on the margins, and challenging the society that kept those on the margins. So I think he's doing something that's very, very fundamental. It's not just a change of style. It's not just it is something absolutely fundamental. And even if he were to die in the near future, I think what he has begun will be very hard to reverse.
Yeah, and he seemed to do that very quickly.
He did,
Didn't he?
and he did it. I think he did it by what he did and not by what he said. Not so much by what he said.
Speak louder than words, is it?
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah.
Have you any other questions?
Not really, no. But yeah.
The other, I suppose, just a question to finish it on would be, like, people who know you well, like people you work with, people that use your services, friends, whatever. How, like, what words do you think they'd use to describe you? Like, just pick a couple of words that would spring to mind how they'd describe you.
You'd have to ask them.
What do you think they'd say?
Well, I'd say commitment probably would come to mind. I don't know, you'll have to ask them.
Okay. Listen, thanks very much.
Yeah,
That was
thank you very much.
really,
Appreciate
really
that.
useful.
Not at all.
Really appreciate your time.
That's great.